Her hand froze halfway to the coffee pot when the laughter started. It was sharp, careless, and aimed right at her. A man at the counter whispered something to his friend, his eyes locked on the jagged scars running down her arm, and they both laughed louder. No one told them to stop. No one even looked at her. In that diner, full of strangers, she stood alone. And yet, she didn't flinch. Mara was not the kind of woman who explained herself to the world. She wore simple clothes, tied her hair back without care, and spoke little. But her skin carried a story that none of them could imagine, a story carved into her by fire, dust, and war. She had been a combat medic once, saving lives in places where the air itself smelled of metal and fear. Places where screaming never stopped, and silence was more dangerous than gunfire. Her scars were not accidents. They were the cost of keeping men alive. Years ago, she had dragged a wounded soldier across open ground while mortars rained down. Her uniform burned against her skin. The pain was so deep she thought she'd never stand again. But she didn't stop until he was breathing under cover. She never even told him her name. All she left him with was her call sign, painted faintly on her vest, Angel. Now, back home, her life was quiet. She poured coffee, wiped tables, and ignored the stares. People saw the marks, but they didn't see the nights she woke sweating, hearing the echoes of men calling for their mothers in the dark. They didn't see the friends who never came home. They didn't see that every scar was a doorway back to a moment she'd rather forget. The laughter at the counter grew louder. One of the men imitated the way her arm moved when she poured a cup. A few others chuckled under their breath. Her knuckles tightened around the pot, but she said nothing. Silence was her armor now. She had learned long ago that some battles are won by refusing to fight. But then the door opened, and the room shifted. A tall man stepped in, his uniform pressed, metals catching the morning light. His eyes swept the room until they landed on her and softened. He walked straight to the counter, stopping between her and the men who had been laughing. No one breathed. The general's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of battlefields. "I never thought I'd see the day," he said, his gaze fixed on her. "Angel, is that you?" The diner went silent. The men's smirks faltered. Her lips parted, but no sound came. It had been years since anyone had called her that. The general turned slowly toward the crowd, his words sharp as steel. "This woman carried wounded men under fire while the rest of us prayed for cover. You're alive today because of people like her. And you laugh at her scars." Nobody moved. Nobody dared. The men who mocked her lowered their eyes, the weight of shame pressing into their shoulders. At that moment, the truth hung in the air. Her scars weren't ugly. They were metals written into flesh. Mara didn't need to say a word. She stood a little taller, and the general gave her a slight nod. Sometimes, the strongest voice is the one that stays silent until the right person speaks. The general left. Every head in the diner followed him. When their eyes returned to her, they were different, softer, heavier with respect. The men at the counter muttered an apology, but she just turned back to her work. She didn't need their words. She had already won. Some scars are not signs of weakness. They are proof of battles fought, lives saved, and promises kept. They tell the story of someone who faced the fire and walked out carrying someone else. So the next time you see them, maybe you'll see the hero instead of the marked. If this story reached you, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you believe the world needs more reminders of silent strength, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, not just for more stories, but to keep the voices of the unseen heroes alive.